Welcome to BC 2040. BC in 2040 is really the best place on Earth, not just because we said so as a slogan, but because we all worked together to make it that way. Tough choices had to be made, and it's taken a few decades, but now we live in a BC that has completely weaned itself off of fossil fuels. In fact, a big ceremony was held last year to celebrate the burning of the last of our natural gas. It turns out that 2012 really was the end of the world, not in a death and destruction Hollywood movie kind of way, but the end of a way of living that was out of balance from nature. In 2012, we saw the last dying gasps of the old fossil fuel empires and their political friends calling for pipelines from Alberta to the coast for tar sands, massive fracking in northern BC to feed other pipelines for gas exports, all amid increasingly obvious signs of climate change, melting Arctic sea ice, crazy weather, droughts, and floods. In 2012, people woke up. In 2013, they said no to expanding the infrastructure for fossil fuel production and yes to building a bright green future. This call for a green industrial revolution became a rallying cry for a cynical population, and it turned into a plan to create green jobs, to wipe out poverty, to innovate, to rise to the challenge of leadership. In 2040, BC Hydro is an even bigger player in managing our supplies of clean energy. Its base of hydropower, supplemented by wind, tidal, and solar technologies, provide the juice for our economy, with a bit of biofuels and hydrogen in the mix for niche applications. But stringent marketplace standards have led to a 5 to 10-fold improvement in the energy efficiency of our homes, appliances, and gadgets. That means we need only a fraction of the energy to get the same benefit as someone in 2012. Buildings in particular have come a long way. For 2 decades now, all new buildings have been designed as net zero, meaning they produce more energy than they consume off of the grid. Still, a large share of existing buildings needed deep retrofits, and we created a Green Buildings Core to make that happen. Next-generation solar, water, and photovoltaic technologies combined with biomass-based district energy systems to make it possible for cities and neighborhoods to greatly reduce their energy demand. The most noticeable change is in how we get around. Now, 80% of us live within a 10-minute walk of a town center, a main street, or a transit hub. As the population grew and got older, strategic public investments in affordable housing, residential care, early learning centers, and community health care were made to bring people, jobs, stores, and other amenities closer together. Density is higher, but neighborhood planning exercises took great care to create vibrant public spaces and parks where people could gather and run into their neighbors. Even in small towns where population wasn't growing so much, seniors housing sparked the renewal of town centers. As a result, half of all trips are made by foot or by bike. Another third of trips are by transit, which underwent a renaissance of expansion back in the teens and 20s. There are still cars, but few people own their own. It's much easier to use a car